All right, I'd like to call the committee of the whole meeting for Monday, December 1st, 2025 to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Gaffino.
Here.
Trustee Christensen.
Here.
Trustee Curtis.
Here.
Trustee Gately.
Here.
Trustee Lowry.
Here.
Trustee Nedved.
Here.
Trustee Salazar.
Here.
All right, audience comments? Seeing none, trustee comments? Moving on to discussion, item 1, Steve.
Thank you. Item number 1 is an item that already came to the committee of the whole at one point, and that was to create a zoning definition for private event space. We have a zoning classification for banquet halls, so we're trying to also look at places that have multiple tenants or places for rental of small groups, not necessarily banquet hall size. Nathan put some language together. The board seemed okay with it as a permitted use. It went to the Plan Commission. They had some concerns and want to keep it a special use. With that, Nathan's going to walk you through what we had already discussed and the Plan Commission's comments.
Yeah, so super quickly, what we talked about at the November 3rd board meeting was creating this second category called private event space for venues under 50 people, making that a permitted use, over 50 people still being a banquet hall special use. Took that to the Plan Commission. They were fine with the definitions, with the different categories. They recommended keeping them both special uses. They felt it would just have more control, in case there were bad actors. Because that was different than what we talked about here, I wanted to bring it back before, I brought an ordinance forward to just get your opinion again, which way we should go with it.
It's fine with me.
I'm fine.
I'm fine with it. Yeah, I'm still okay with it.
Yep.
Okay.
I just want a clarification. Are we fine keeping it a permitted use or fine with the Plan Commission's comments and making it a special use?
Make it a special use. The change.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll make that change and bring it back at the next meeting for a vote.
All right, thank you. Item 2, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Item number 2 is a concept plan from ARB Apartments. This is on Orchard Gateway Boulevard. So earlier tonight on our consent agenda, we mentioned Clover. Clover came in over a year ago. That was the senior targeted apartment complex that was going to be located behind JCPenney. This is essentially immediately adjacent to the west, directly behind Target. So kind of a mirroring. They're not identical, but then you have a senior targeted apartment complex going in on one side, and this would be just a genuine regular apartment complex. And Nathan, with that, would you walk us through?
Sure. So when we saw the Clover project last year, as Steve said, in that PUD amendment, we included the entire area north of Orchard Gateway as the new residential area for the town center development. So originally, back in 2006, Town Center had a residential component. Eventually, there was an amendment, and that's where the warehouses got built. And then we decided to reintroduce some residential component to Town Center. So the PUD created this whole area as the residential area, and then that green box is approximately where Clover's going, and then the red half is the group tonight. So tonight we have AR Building Company, which is a national real estate development firm. They have units in many states, as you can see here. They are build, own, operate, maintain company, so they don't flip them. They build these units and keep them. And they are looking to do an all ages product, so unlike Clover, which was age targeted at 55 or age restricted at 55, this would be open to the general public. Their concept plan goes right next to Clover, so this is the entrance to Clover, kind of on the right there, and then this is the entrance to the Signal with Target, and that's the new Ram dealership there. So the current proposal would be 150 units in one 4-story building, which would match Clover, which is also one 4-story building. A mixture of studios, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom layouts, would have quite a few amenities, a pool, fitness rooms, community centers, and the like. With complementary architecture, to Clover, so Clover also had balconies and things like that. So not identical, but would complement each other fairly well. The existing access points on Orchard Gateway are already there, so there's already a light at the Ram dealership, and it already has a cross-access easement to allow access to this property. And the Clover development is putting in the stub to this property on the east, excuse me. They are showing, so this site plan has 2 spaces per unit as our code requires. They are requesting that some of the area be land banked parking. They would like to put in 1.5 and have this area be grass, open for use, and then build the spaces if needed. So they do have the space for it, so they can fit all of that. They just would like some of that to be land banked. If they don't need it, they don't want extra pavement to just have pavement. With that, I will invite the applicant up to answer any questions. One more good picture.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Jason Kambitsis, K-A-M-B-I-T-S-I-S. I'm the president of AR Development Company. So thank you for having me here this evening. I think Nathan pretty much did my job. But, just to briefly overview what he said. So, yeah, we have over 10,000 units in 13 states. We build, buy, and manage all of our own property. What I mean by that is we actually go out like this, find a piece of property, entitle the property, build it ourselves. We act as our own general contractor. And then when it's done, we manage the properties. AR building staff actually is on site, and then we own them. We don't sell any of our properties. We build this for our own private portfolio. We currently are building projects in Gurnee, Round Lake Beach, and we have other projects under contract in Illinois. This site and this type of site is a kind of a standard type of development for us. We like these suburbanized sites. We like to use property that maybe once was commercial. Now this is actually a residential site, and this is actually used by right. But we like to be near retail. We like to be near other businesses. We actually built a building very similar to this in East Providence, Rhode Island. It actually sits in front of there's a Chipotle, gas station, some other tenants in front of it. So we know how this building operates. This building is 150 units, 4-story elevated building. We like to do the 4-story building so we can get the elevators in it. The building actually has 2 elevators, 1 on each wing. And as you can see, the materials, we like to use brick. We use Trex decking. We use thick siding. We use high-end windows. All of our properties have essentially a condo finish on the inside, from quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, washers and dryers in each unit. We build these as Class A apartment properties. They're run as such. And this just shows you, highlights the amenities that we have. This building will have a gym, a gathering space, a big community room, a pool. So it would be very complementary to some of the other Class A apartments in the area, and I think will work very well with the potential, I guess, the actual neighbor coming in from Clover. So we're here to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, I have a few
Happy to
questions.
discuss. Yeah.
How did you figure 1.5 spaces for parking? How did that get calculated?
And that's a great question. Parking is planning. So we come across that all the time. We can actually show on all of our properties, we use never more than 1.2 spaces per unit. We have a lot of suburbanized properties. 1.5 is really what's become the norm as an ask across the country. We never, ever have a parking issue. If we had a parking issue, we wouldn't be able to conduct our business. So we're asking for the 1.5 just so we're not building more parking than's needed. We have that spot there in case we need to have it, so people aren't
What
going
will
over.
determine you using that spot? How will you determine when to use that area for parking?
If we don't have enough, if we're getting close to not having enough parking,
Like if you're full capacity?
we wouldn't wait until full capacity. But we would go ahead and if the parking lot's getting full or people are having issues with parking, they're complaining about parking, we'll go in and do that. We're doing that actually in one place in Ohio, where we had a spot that was supposed to be garages, we're converting it to 20 parking spots. And that's after, 7 years, 8 years after it was built.
What do you anticipate the rent to be for the studio, one bedroom and two bedroom?
You know, these are all market rates, so I think market rate in the area right now, studios are probably $1,700 a month, $1,800 a month, and it goes up from there.
What's your unit mix going to be on these?
There'll be some studios, it's mostly, when we do a property like this, the studios and the one bedrooms take up about 60% of the property.
So
and
it's going to
then
be a majority one bedroom,
Majority one in studio, yeah.
one in studio? Okay,
And
so
then-
these are going to be smaller units
When
that
I
are
say
going to be on the
studio,
lower end of the price point for the area, correct?
some of them will be the studios, but the studios really act as like a one bedroom. They're about 550 square feet, but they're essentially are a one bedroom. They're just a little smaller. Those are always the first to go everywhere, is the studios. People like that space.
And what's the level of finish? Are we talking granite, hardwood, or?
Quartz countertops, we use it's a laminate like everybody else uses on the flooring, stainless steel appliances. We use high-end appliances, washers and dryers. Every unit has essentially an in-house furnace. We use carrier units inside. So we don't find and go out there, what's the cheapest unit, and we go and get that. We like to have them, again, for longevity. If you're maintaining something, you want to make sure that you bought something that's built to last.
I have a question for Steve. The Grove, the development that's going to be next to it, is that a 3 or 4 story?
4-story as well.
Okay, so they'd both be 4 stories.
How long do you think it'll take to start to finish?
From construction, a building like this probably takes 24 months. I'm saying site work and then building it. Because it's one big building, you know, sometimes we do it where you have a 50-unit building, a 50-unit building. You could start opening on a rolling basis. This all has to open up at one time.
I would like to see a little bit more architectural detailing and ornamentation on the exterior. These big box vanilla cookie cutters, I mean, we've got so many of them already. I'd like to, especially being on a retail corridor.
Yeah, I think you could see it a little better here, and then you can kind of see the articulation in the building. And we have a building similar to this that we can share really what it looks like up close and really how the building shifts back and forth. The pictures don't show it. The building does go back and forth. The corners, there's units that are actually inset into the corners, so it has a completely different feel when you're in there.
The brick is nice. I do like the brick.
Yeah, so do we. Thank you.
Just thinking about maybe the residents, are there multiple access points to the building? Because just looking at the rendering, it kind of looks like maybe only 1 or 2.
No, each one of the corners there, if you're looking at the building, on the top, each one of the corners in the top, there's an access point. On the bottom, there's an access point, and on the top, there's an access point. Where you go in at the top where it says the pool, that's where the leasing office is. And then
Got
in the
it.
center of the building, we have a 2-story clubhouse and gym.
I guess my only concern is the unit mix being so heavily studio and one bedroom. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that because that's a little bit on the lower end of the price point. That's maybe a little bit too high of a density. That's my opinion.
Well, it's in an area where it makes sense. It's not in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It's kind of in a corridor where we were going to have more commercial. That didn't come, and this was just. I think it fits quite well, myself.
$1,700 for a studio? I don't know, maybe I'm out of touch. That does not seem like a low price point to me for a studio. Not to me, it doesn't, so.
Anybody else?
I'm okay with it.
Is your-
I'm okay with
is
the whole
your-
idea.
Generally, are this younger people, do you see getting these type of units, or is it
You
kind
know,
of a mix with a lot of studio?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, honestly, all the units are a mix. So we have people who really want to move back to the community or don't want to leave the community and don't want to own a home. And then we have people who don't want to leave the community and, they're empty nesters. And some people don't want to live in an age-restricted community. They want to be with people of different ages, right?
Yeah.
And so we get people of all shapes and sizes, but really it's a professional workforce, usually single people and couples.
Can you tell us how many, what would be the ratio between the studio and the one bedroom?
Well, it's in that building, you're going to have out of the 80, 90 units that are twos, you're probably going to have, I'll give you an answer right now, 1, 2, 4, what is that, 6, 10, 14. Probably of them there's probably 40 studios out of the 150.
40 studios. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. I kind of like actually the idea about the parking spaces, not overdoing it with pavement to start. You know, there's a lot of pavement that's unused. So as long as it's reserved for potential, you know, parking in the future, I'm good with more green, quite honestly. But otherwise, I like it. I think it fits great over there. Hopefully, stuff like this will revive the town center.
Yeah.
I like the idea of, I'm sure most people would
Yeah.
like the idea of having grass as opposed to pavement,
Right.
Yeah, so
and
would
leave
we.
it as such until you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that works. Most people would rather see a grassy, would it be like a landscaped area or just grass or?
Yeah, it would be a grass area, just like the rest of it. Could we
Okay.
put stuff in it? Yeah, I mean, we'll see what we do with it, but we'd much rather see that as well. I mean, it's not really a cost issue. It's just how much pavement do you really need to have anywhere?
Do we need to potentially look at sidewalk along Orchard Gateway?
Yeah, so, you know, the use is approved in the PUD, but it will come back for site plan review, so it'll go to the planning commission, back to the board to approve the site plan. And once we get into, you know, engineering details, Clover is installing a sidewalk along their stretch of Orchard Gateway, so you'd pick that up and run it to the light. You know, things like that would get worked out.
Have we presented this to them to get their opinion on having another
To
mixed
Clover?
Yeah.
I don't believe I've sent them your concept plan, but they are, I know it's been a while, we first looked at their plan about a year ago, but they have building plans in now, and it's ever so slowly moving forward.
I just want to kind of make sure that they think that that's a good fit, having potentially a lot of mixed ages right next to them as well.
Yeah, I'll present it to them. You know, they never raised any concern like that. You know, they said their site is age restricted, but they didn't, they've never raised a concern about, you know, apartments going next door.
It's the same property owner, or was the same property owner.
Yes, same property owner is selling both
Yeah.
sites.
Don't want to run into any of those stay off my lawn issues, right?
All right, I think we're good. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Great, moving on to item 3. Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. If you give me 1 second, we're going to switch over to my computer. Okay. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Fox River Dam update. I'm going to go through here, just a quick little history. So back in 2015, the village and the Fox Valley Park District had an intergovernmental agreement at the time to remove the Fox River Dam. The project was, the IGA was with the IDNR, and at the time funding was available for the project. In 2019, the project was revisited by the IDNR. In that 4-year span, our IGA had terminated. It expired basically as funding for the project went away. And so it came back in 2019 when funding became available again. The IDNR started looking into it. 2020, they started doing some engineering of potential dam removal options. And in 2022, they presented those options. There was about a dozen of them to the village board. And at that time, the village board, the goal was to pare down to any potential options the village would be interested in studying further. And then where we're at today is to actually go over the results of that study, which did take about 2.5 years. It's a very in-depth study. The IDNR is with us tonight. They are going to give us that update and in depth about the potential for dam removal and whether or not what effects it'll have on the remaining land around it. So here's a few reminders before I turn this over to the IDNR. First, the state of Illinois owns our dam here in town, so it is the property of the state of Illinois. The Fox Valley Park District owns the shoreline on both sides of the river, so any dam removal project is going to be in partnership with us and the Fox Valley Park District. The village has 3 water main crossings for our water system. They are all south of the State Street Bridge, so basically downstream of the dam currently. The village is responsible for the mill race that runs along Village Hall and the structures. So the structure in the river is arguably is the Fox Valley Park District's, but the pipe underneath, the majority of that pipe underground, and then the structure right here where the water comes out and the shoreline there thereafter in Riverfront Park is currently the village's responsibility. The mill race then flows south. It goes under State Street, and as you know, it has Island Park on one side, and there are homes that do back up to the mill race on Grant Street. Before we get into this, I just wanted to go over the next step. This is the last slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to the IDNR. Tonight, the village board is looking to provide feedback on what options the IDNR has reviewed and whether any of those options are deemed worthy to go forward to public comment. So basically, the next step, and I'll get to that in a second, would be to bring it to a public comment period. But in the interim, I just want to say no final decision on dam removal is being made tonight. This isn't, obviously, we're not a board meeting, we're at a committee of the whole. This is really about the study and just determining the effects of their study and what the next steps will be in that process of determining whether or not to remove the dam. Based on tonight's meeting, the Fox Valley Park District will review our feedback as they would like to know what the village's thoughts are of the study. And then that's where I'm going to skip to 3. That's where we're back to what would happen if the board says, hey, this one option or these 2 options are worth considering to go forward with. In that regard, we would have a separate public meeting, probably off-site, most likely at a junior high, middle school here, middle school or a high school, and we'd invite the public out to actually look at that option in depth, what it would have, what kind of effects dam removal would have on the river, the shoreline, get that feedback, take it back to the village board for further conversation before a final decision is made on whether the village board would want to move forward with the potential removal of the dam. Then even in that case, wanted to remind the board, there's a bunch of checks and balances in place too. So even after that, if we agree to move forward with the Fox Valley Park District for a dam removal option, we still have to draft an IGA with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. That IGA would then come back again to the village board for review. And if that IGA was approved, it'll likely have additional checks and balances, such as not approving any dam removal until the final engineering is prepared, so that we can review the actual effects, utilities in the ground, everything before the final decision is made. So right now, tonight, just go back to number 1. No final decision on dam removal. The IDNR has put together a very thorough study. They're just going to walk us through their findings. With that, I'm going to switch over to the IDNR and see if this actually works. It's coming.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Tara McParlin. I'm with the Office of Water Resources, which is a group within the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. And I am the acting section chief of the engineering studies, and that is within our capital division, or capital programs division, in which these dam removal and dam restoration and stream restoration projects fall under. So I don't know when we get this up, I don't know if you guys have small screens, but these slides are just going to be an overview. You don't have to look at the details. We're not here to inundate you with all the information, but hopefully you can see enough of the slide show when it does come up to go ahead and have enough questions. So we want to really just provide an overview of the study, of the project, and then we want to entertain your questions. But while we're waiting, I'll go ahead and introduce. I've also brought with me Aaron Rotherham, and he was our engineer, our modeler for this project. And then I have Kyle Harms, and he is our new stream restoration program manager. So he hasn't been involved extensively in the project so far, but we look forward to having him be part of the project as we move forward. And we're all engineers, and we're all worked pretty hard on this study, as Steve mentioned. There's quite a history here. I got involved about 4 maybe 4.5 years ago, and then we got the pandemic. So we had to slow down. Some funding resources changed over time. But we have been working steadily on the project. And today, when I go over what was in the report, we've also been working since that report was published last July, and we're going to provide a little update of what we've been doing since then.
I think he's got it.
I mean, I can see the study on my screen, so.
You see it there?
You just describe it for us, Steve.
I do have it on a jump drive, but I don't think that's going to help.
Interpretive dance or something.
This thing takes a second to fill because it's
No,
over.
it's-
Hence why we're spending money to fix it.
But
So this might be why you guys need to get your new audio-visual.
Yeah, there is.
Pushing the boot up, it has to look at every source. Then you get that.
technical difficulties.
I just sent it via email.
Pure self.
Yes. It's a meeting about the dam.
Technology is your friend until technology is not your friend. I said technology is your friend until technology is not your friend.
F8, well, at least they got this computer-looking screen.
Patriots winning?
I'll fix it. Turn it off, turn it back on.
Well, while he's doing that, I might mention that we do have funding available at the Office of Water Resources that we think that's going to be one of your questions. And historically, dam removals for these run-of-the-river dams, they are a very large safety hazard. And so a lot of these no longer serve their original function. So, all right, we can go ahead and start. Go ahead, I think the next slide is just the cover. Next. So again, project overview, very brief. We have lots of data. There's a report that's written, and we're always open to answering questions that you guys might have. But we're going to just briefly go over the models and what those models, what we did, what those models were done for, to sort of illustrate what the areas might look like after the dam is removed. And then we do have those alternatives that Steve talked about, and we're going to briefly go over those just to give you an overview. And then a big part of this particular project is sediment and getting a permit with the Illinois EPA related to potential contamination. So we've been spending a lot of time working directly with EPA to try to figure out how they want to handle this project of some potential sediment transport, and that we'll be talking about later in the discussion. And then we'll just go over those costs and how those costs would be shared between the local entity and the state. So location, you guys are all familiar with your dam. You're part of the big Fox River watershed that originates in Wisconsin. But the middle map, as Steve mentioned, the DNR does own the dam itself, and the Park District owns the abutments, which are the side portions of the dam. And so we will be working very closely with the village, the Park District, and the state for whatever solution we come up with. Next. These are just some photos of the dam, and the photo on the right is the actual dam as it was being constructed in the 70s. It actually has those stair steps, and that was supposed to help safety, but unfortunately it was maybe not designed exactly with the latest standards, and we still are having some safety concerns at this dam. But I think you're all familiar with the dam, so next. This is the safety issue. What happens is when there is a dam in place, the current overtops the dam and it makes a scour hole on the downstream portion of the dam, and that is where you get these vortexes that people can get caught in, and that's why we've had safety issues. People can drown, they get caught up in that critical flow pattern, and people a lot of times actually drown trying to save the people that are stuck in the dam. So that submerged hydraulic jump is something that we want to avoid for mainly for safety purposes. All right, next we'll talk about the model briefly. So we're able to model what the river looks like today, and we call this existing conditions. And this is showing different flows that go past through the Fox River, and we run the analysis to compare all those alternatives to what it looks like today. And these were the conditions we used for our model. We ran it at a low flow during drought conditions, and that's generally when we would remove the dam itself, when the flows in the river are lower than normal. And then we compared that to the middle, the average flows that river sees, as well as the peak. And those maps on are showing what the river looks like in terms of depth in the river for those different flows. Next. And then we also did a lot, as I mentioned, about sediment transport. And originally in the report, we had a 1D model, which means it was a very basic overview cursory model to try to help us to determine where that sediment might move. After you take the dam out, we know that there's a pool of water upstream of the dam, and then there has been an accumulation over time of that sediment. So we want to know where that sediment might go. So since the report, we've been the DNR's gone out and collected a lot more data, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we were able to do a 2D transport, and we were able to reduce and refine the quantities estimated of potentially contaminated material. In the study itself, and again we'll talk more later, we had about $4 million or more than $4 million just to remove any potentially contaminated sediment from the river.
What's it contaminated with?
Well, as we go through, I'll show you. There's just different chemicals that EPA is looking for. Okay. And I mean, unfortunately, the river itself has a lot of previous industry, and it could be previous historical, not something new, but it's just been collected in the river with that sediment. Okay, next. So this is a really interesting site because we actually, you guys can see what it's going to look like. Most of the time when we come to one of these, the local entity wants to know what it looks like, but you did have a dam breach in the 70s and they rebuilt the dam. So the photograph on the top is what you might expect that river upstream of the dam once it's removed, because this was a breach and all the water ended up passing through that breach. And then in 1976, they rebuilt the dam, and that's what it looks like today on the bottom. But next slide. Another thing that we get to do with our model is we calibrate our model, and we try to make sure our model looks like what you might expect. So we were able to overlay our model with your previous conditions when the dam was removed, and it really confirmed our model and made us feel more comfortable that what we're going to be showing you actually will be what you see. All right, next. All right, we're going to look at these alternatives. So objectives, our primary, as I already mentioned, is safety, and then we have secondary. Whenever we remove a dam, there's a lot of good reasons that the ecological improvements as well as the water quality really improves when a dam is no longer there. You get better fish passage, and you do get recreational improvements, especially for kayaks and other non-motorized boating. But we also looked at some local considerations that the village brought forward because of the location of the dam, and it's in the park, and we wanted to maintain that mill race to make sure that that water flowed after that dam was removed. Because the reason you have a mill race flow is because the dam backs up the water and forces it to go through the mill race. When you take out that dam, you no longer have that ability to bring water through the mill race. So we looked at alternatives to help you maintain that flow. But then we also wanted to minimize impacts to the park, the trees, and the future plans for the plaza. Next. So after you guys narrowed it down, we still had 10 alternatives to look at. So you didn't make our job completely easy, but a lot of them, I'm going to try to summarize them and compile them so you don't have to remember all 10. But basically, we looked at just removing the dam, and then most of the other alternatives were how to maintain that mill race flow. So they weren't all that much different, just how to make sure you had water. Next. So this looks like a spaghetti picture, but this was just to sort of show those different alternatives. They're all very similar. At the end of the day, the first 8 all included removing the dam, and then just the 2nd through 8 only had ways to bring more water to the mill race. And then we also looked at alternative 9 as if for some reason the public or the local entity wanted to keep some of the pool upstream. We would do a partial dam removal. And then the last one, the 10th alternative, was just if the contaminated soil was so expensive that we could not get a permit or come to terms with EPA, or it was too costly, that we would keep the dam but try to do some modifications to make it a little bit safer. So that's why you have all 10. Next. Today I'm just going to talk about 4 of those because they all fall within some groups. The first one was just looking at that dam removal. The second and third that we're going to talk about, we either looked at bringing the water through an open channel through the park to feed that mill race, or we looked at changing the existing culvert that's there. The culvert, I don't know how familiar you guys are, but you have a culvert that is north of the dam, and that's how the water flows through the parking lot and then goes into the mill race. And that, once that pool is decreased, that won't flow by gravity anymore, so we had to make some alternatives. Next. So when you look at the full dam removal, we did these pros and cons for all the different alternatives, but the graphics on the left is really just showing a cross-section. If you were looking at your dam, or you were standing in the middle of the river and looking upstream on your dam, you would see the green line is representative of what that dam looks like, and then the bottom black line is when that dam is removed. And then the lower graph is if you were looking, you were on the park and looking up at your dam, you can see that green line is the peak on the left is the dam, and then that peak that goes below the surface is that scour hole that I was talking about, that over time, that's all eroded that soil that used to be behind the dam or downstream of the dam, and that's what's causing that safety. You have all that velocity that goes over the dam, and it causes that vortex that I was talking about. So if you just remove the dam and don't make any modifications to maintain that mill race flow, it'll be about a little over $2.5 million. And we're going to talk a little bit later about cost shares and how the state is going to proceed with different alternatives and what they were willing to pay for. But in this particular alternative, the state would pay the majority, and the local costs would just be related to getting easements for any sediment removal. Next. So again, people want to know what it looks like. These are what the depths look like both before and after the dam is removed. The left is what's existing, and the right side of each one of those is what it looks like after the dam is removed. And it's really hard, but Steve, can you show the mill race? On the left, you can see in that second one, it dries out. Or I guess you could do that on the next one. Right there, that's right there, that is where the mill race, it dries out, and there would be no water flowing in the mill race.
I have a question. I'm sorry. I mean, this is overly technical for my level, but I'm looking at this, and it doesn't tell me, I can't get a visualization of how is that going to affect our waterfront viewscape. Is it going to make it smaller? Is it going to make it expand? I mean, what's going to happen? Because one of the things I noticed on your list of cons was that we now have an amenity that's not going to be there. And I think that should be a big con that we should be considering as well. We're trying to do a Block 1 development here. This is supposed to be like a big economic engine for the village. And now without that dam, I mean, are we still going to have a nice view? What's going to happen to the width of the
Sure, and we can talk about that at the end. I just wanted to go ahead and give the overview, but maybe we'll have some better pictures and some examples to show what other projects have done.
I don't know what the yellow means, the blue means, the purple.
Sure, that's just showing the depth, because some people want to know that the water, that they're used to having a 10-foot depth for fishing. Now it might be 5 or 6. So that's what that shows, but you're right, that's very technical. So go ahead and move on. Alternative 3 was just this channel, and the picture on the left was just showing the blue line that goes from right below the dam removed. That was an area where the water naturally flows during a flood event. The water currently wants to run through the park and then go straight into the mill race. So one of the alternatives the village wanted us to look at was how to incorporate that natural feature and actually still maintain water in the mill race. This one ended up costing a little bit more, and you do have to fill in a portion. So to your question, if you went with this particular alternative, you would be filling in some of the mill race in the park. But the water then would flow downstream and look the same as it always did after that. But this one we did not recommend, but we just wanted you to know that we looked at it. All right, next. The other alternative to bring water to the mill race is just taking that culvert, and that right now is that blue line that sort of shunts through right there. Thank you. That is a culvert, which is just a pipe, an underground pipe, and that brings the water to the mill race. It collects water from the river, and because, as I mentioned before, when we take out the dam, the existing culvert isn't set at the right elevation to bring that water by gravity. So we looked at all different alternatives of how to make that culvert bring the water by either making it deeper or changing the layout. And these ones were, again, about the $2 to $3 million cost. Next. And then that last one I mentioned was just if we could not remove the dam for whatever reason, we wanted to make sure that the village understood that this is not the preferred state alternative. And then when we talk about cost share, this ends up costing the local entities more because the state does not give as much money when a dam is not removed. So that's the main thing, and it doesn't really address the public safety concerns that we had. Next. All right, this is probably too technical, but we were just trying to show people what the depths upstream for all those alternatives, because we had to compare all the alternatives and help you guys decide which one was best. But what you'll see is looking in the middle, alternative 1 through 8, they're almost all the same. There's not a lot of difference. Go to the next slide. But what we really wanted was to make sure you got mill race flow. And all these are showing that that mill race alternatives do indeed bring water to the mill race, but they would be at different quantities based on which one you selected. And this just allows you to look at all of them at the same time and compare. One thing I wanted to mention, that the Corps of Engineers is one of the permitting entities, and originally we thought the Corps was going to require you to keep water to the mill race, but because of the positive things that we do by removing the dam, they've decided that overcompensates any negative that we would have by not bringing water to the mill race. So they would not stop a permit from happening. So keeping water to the mill race would be more for your local entities and the people that live along that mill race. They may have a strong interest in keeping that flow. But as of now, we don't think that there are any permitting entities that will require you to do that. All right. And then we're going to have Aaron just talk a little bit about the sediment.
This here, you can see the photo on the left is the original sediment samples that were taken initially based on the 2019 probing. On the right, that photo is based off of the 1D sediment transport model and locations that we thought were going to move.
Excuse me, could you put the microphone a little closer?
Sorry about that.
Yeah. If you're
How's
able-
that?
Yeah, that's better.
All right. These are the results of those tests done for the EPA. You can see with all the red that several of the parameters did not fall within IEPA standards. These are the results from the 1D model as far as sediment transport goes. The blue is the existing erosion during the 5-year event, which is going to be that 6,700 cubic feet a second. And the red is after the dam is removed and kind of directed where we were going to take those sample locations. This is the updated sediment transport model, and it is a lot more refined than the 1D, so you can see basically existing versus the dam removed and what's moving where in the river channel. Blue is up, sorry. Blue is going to be deposition, red is going to be erosion. This is our current status regarding the sediment transport modeling and trying to get approval from the EPA. So far, we've gotten new bathymetry, we've done new probing to try and determine how much sediment is out there. We've refined a 2D model, and based on the results from the 2D model, next will be to analyze those grains to determine if it's contaminated, how much of it's contaminated, to try and get that approval from the Illinois EPA. Regarding sediment, dredging was pretty much the only option. It was way more expensive to try and cap it, and the picture in the middle is basically all the property owners that we would need some sort of approval from to go out and actually dredge the river. These are the estimated costs based on the 2D sediment transport model. As previously said, it was over $4 million with the 1D model. And right now, we're looking at those ranges between $250,000 and $1 million.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm a little confused. So when we're looking at this volume of projected eroded sediment, if I'm looking at with leaving the dam there, there's no cost, there's no issue with sediment, but because of the removal, we now have additional costs related to sediment?
Correct. It has to do with
dam
the
if we're not
Illinois
potentially having to
EPA.
have that
It's,
It sounds like.
it's going to move. It's a flowing natural river. It's just once we get involved, then it becomes a very arduous process.
My concern with this whole thing would be, like, when you do renovations to an old house, and you think it's just going to be knock down this wall or do something else, and now you find out you have asbestos and you've got problems with the electrical and this and that. If it's not broke, why fix it type of scenario.
Fair enough. Like I said, this was just to study what would be the effects of removing the dam. And then if we do go forward with removing the dam, it is going to have to get permitted by the EPA, which therefore they have their own guidelines, and that's kind of what we're trying to narrow down with the newer version of the model and show that either contaminated sediment's not going to move, or that what is moving is not contaminated, or that it doesn't meet that threshold for the EPA to even have to test.
But what guarantees do we have that we remove the dam and now we have all this, let's say, toxicity due to the sediment? How do we know that's not going to affect wildlife, public safety, public health? What can you say to that point?
I would just say that that material was already in the river, and it was going to move regardless of whether the dam was there, and so there is no difference between whether the dam is there or not. So in terms of your public safety for the residents and things like that, there's no change. The only issue we have is that the EPA needs to approve the project to move forward, and they've determined that that sediment that used to be back behind the dam could move downstream, but it would have anyway. So we're really just going through the motions. So I can't necessarily answer and give you a confirmation, but we keep trying to work with them to minimize those impacts, and we're trying to argue that what they're requesting may or may not be reasonable. So that's why we keep trying to refine the model and really try to show them that that material is not going to be a problem and we shouldn't have to mitigate or to remove it at all. So that's our ultimate goal.
So my other issue would be, say Batavia and St. Charles, they take their dams out too. Are we going to see a surplus, an influx of toxic or sediment or contamination coming down by the time it gets down to
All
us?
that sediment would have moved naturally with or without those dams. When you have a big storm event, the sediment becomes part of the water and moves up and over the dams. So there will be no difference. It's just it does accumulate upstream of the dam for a while, but then it eventually moves. So there is no change, but you will get temporary impacts of some sediment accumulating downstream of where those dams were, but eventually they just keep moving down. That's a natural, the way the river moves through the system.
So naturally, it'll clean itself if it keeps flowing then.
Pardon me?
So naturally, it will just clean itself if it keeps flowing. Is that right?
I mean, that's what
That's
would
the
have
idea,
happened
right?
with or without the dams. But we're just going through the permitting requirements. But we'll go ahead and finish because I do want to show you some of what the recent projects look like.
All right, go ahead. And it was brought to our attention that there were utilities downstream, and then based on Carpentersville and the pipes that were exposed there, it seems like that was cause for concern. And with Carpentersville, those utilities were actually upstream of the dam and in the pool.
Right.
So there should be no issue downstream. Downstream will see very little change as far as erosion goes. If anything, it'll actually see, at least initially, sediment dropping out, sand, gravel, things of that nature. And here you can see before and afters of Carpentersville downstream of the dam. It goes all the way down about 6,000 feet downstream of where the dam was. Here is a picture of the South Batavia Dam before and after. You can really see there's not a whole lot of change there.
Right.
And this is the before and after, and then the revegetation upstream of the Carpentersville Dam. And you can kind of see the impacts it had on the pool.
Okay, hopefully that helps show you a little bit of what they look like. But again, we're going to answer questions. I want to finish because I know this is longer than we had hoped to take your time. But we looked at all those alternatives. This is just a summary of all the costs. They all were about the same in terms of project cost. And then the blue is the amount of just to remove the sediment, if the amount that we've calculated right now and that EPA requires us to dredge from the river to remove. Go ahead. So besides just the actual cost, the capital cost of removing the dam, just so you guys know, there are some of those aesthetics or those other costs that are associated that you guys would no longer bear. There's no structure maintenance cost for the village or whoever maintains the dams. There's less downstream erosion. I know you guys do a lot of erosion control along the banks. That would be reduced because the dam is what's causing those big changes in velocity and erosion. You do have emergency response and, of course, the liability. At the end of the day, we're really talking about the liability of the dam. Right now, the state is trying to either remove the dams for the liability. The cost of the dam removal compared to the liability of somebody having an accident and the costs associated with that, besides just the cost, but the cost to human life is high. So we feel that the costs are very minor compared to those other maybe non-capital costs. All right, next. All right, then we looked at all the alternatives and tried to compare them. This is just, you don't need to read it all, but we compared them for that primary. Which alternative met the safety concern? Which of the alternatives met those secondary concerns that we were looking at, or those goals? And then we also looked at those local goals to see which alternative met some of those park amenity features that we would not disrupt. And at the end of the day, we ended up, next slide, recommending two of the culvert options. Those were the least expensive. They met most of the goals, and they were the path that we think that the village and the park district might want to think about moving forward. Recognizing these were just some alternatives, eventually this just means a culvert alternative could be selected. It would be refined during the design to make sure it met all of the local needs and where they would want to see that culvert. Next. So the other ones were not recommended for a lot of various reasons, and you can look at those details, but ultimately the culvert option seemed to be the most attractive for meeting most of those goals. Next. So the DNR does have a dam removal program right now, and there is cost shares. And what they do is if the dam is removed, the state will pay for the capital cost to remove the dam as well as the design, and they'll pay everything at 100%. The only thing that the local entity would have to pay would be for any local utilities crossings if those needed to be changed, or if you need some permit fees and things like that. But if the dam is not removed, or if it was just partially removed, then those cost share completely changes, and the village would be responsible for almost all of the costs, or not the village, the owners, the local entity, and then the state would pay about 60% of those costs, but just for the capital project, and they would not be involved in the design and things like that. So, and this is just a rough example. All this would be worked out with our IGA that we went forward with. The next, they really wanted me to show the cost for each alternative, whether, how much the DNR or the state would pay versus what you would have to pay for these particular alternatives, recognizing they may be modified slightly as we move forward in the design process. But at the end of the day, the state would pay for most of alternatives 1 through 6. We would bear most of the costs. But if you end up picking one of the alternatives where the dam isn't completely removed or the safety is not completely addressed, then the local entity ends up taking some of those responsibilities.
I have a quick question on that one. Alternative 10, no removal. Why is there any cost?
For the sediment, so that there's no removal
I'm just saying, no. Why is there a cost of $568,000 if we did nothing?
For the no dam removal, I maybe should have clarified that a little bit more. We wanted to enhance the safety, so we actually added a rock ramp. I remember I showed you those steps, and they were still having that vortex. So the only way we were trying to summarize it, but that one does have costs associated to make it as safe as possible with keeping the dam in place, because we can't leave it the way it is because it is a hazard. Does that help explain it?
Sure, yep.
And in this case, there would be no cost for sediment removal because you're not removing the dam and you wouldn't need to get that permit from EPA. Next. So I believe Steve sort of already talked about the next steps, but just to refresh, we just wanted to give you an overview. We also are going to give this type of overview after you guys have decided and talked amongst yourselves with the Park District. We plan to have a public meeting, and hopefully you guys will have narrowed down which alternative you want us to present at the public meeting, and then using that input from the public as well as from both of your boards, then we would go into that IGA if you wanted to move forward, and we would work together with all the entities and develop a design and a path forward. But again, that's the path forward, but there's a lot of steps that we're not showing. But next. I think that's it, but we know there's questions, so please. Feel free. We have other slides.
Yeah, you've mentioned a couple of times about whoever owns it. So right now, obviously, the state owns it. If we chose to keep it, does that mean we own it?
Well, that is the approach that we're doing, because right now we don't want that liability. So the state has this funding to remove those dams that the state owns. So, but we don't want to just come in and remove your dam without your input. So that's why we're soliciting input from all we have several projects that we have along the Fox River that are going through the same process. And so if the village or the local entities decide not to remove the dam, then we will offer you ownership of that dam, and you would take responsibility and the liability associated with that dam.
And what if we don't accept it?
If you don't accept the ownership,
Yes.
then eventually the state probably would still want to get the dam removed, and we're trying to work with you, but ultimately, if we have the responsibility, it could be years from now, but we will probably more likely remove the dam. But we don't want to do that. We want to work with you. We don't usually come in and tell people that's not our mode of operation. We're trying not to do that, but some decisions have to be made. We don't want that liability, and the only way for us to get rid of that liability is to remove the dam if we own it, or we transfer ownership to those that want to keep the dam.
I have two concerns. One is what would be the impact of the upstream bankside property? Would it increase? Would it erode? What would happen with that?
If you can pull back the picture that showed Carpentersville, right around there. So this is sort of what it looks like throughout the life of the dam removal. So in general, the way the state of Illinois operates is the people that live along the river own the river bed. So the people, and there was that map that showed all the different owners. So the people that own that property in front of that river, they can do whatever they'd like to their property. They can keep that area, they can mow it, they can enhance it, they could plant things. But as part of the state, we do not go in and put new plantings in the river. This is all natural vegetative growth that has happened within maybe 6 to 8 months.
Great.
That's what it might look like.
Yeah. Great. I don't have a problem with removing the dam at all, except that one concern. And the other concern I have is the mill race. I would like, which of these alternative suggestions would keep the mill race the fullest and flowing?
That's what the
6.
the culvert options did provide that, and that's
Well,
why it
they're-
was recommended.
Either one of them, or?
Yeah, like I said, those were just some different alternatives, but you would refine it during design. But the deeper one, there's pros and cons. I didn't get into the specific details, but yes, culvert 4 here still brings about 59 CFS to the mill race, and number 6 brought 65. Those were the highest of the culvert, and when I talked about that open channel, this
4
brought
or
the
6?
most.
4 or 6
Yes.
option? Okay.
4 and number 6 are what ultimately we recommended, but it's just our recommendation.
Yeah, I like 6.
So if the dam is removed, ultimately the river itself will become healthier. Is that your
Correct.
position?
Correct. So when I talked about the primary goal is safety, and then those secondary goals were about habitat enhancement, and the dissolved oxygen levels in the river go up, and then you also get a lot more fish, natural fish passage, and you get species that can cross those barriers, so you do get a lot more recreational benefits as well. So there's just, there's a lot of reasons to remove these.
So for options 4 and 6, the river is the width that it is now, right? When the river's high or low, it's a little bit different. But would it substantially get narrower here through the village? And by how much would you think it would get narrower?
Well, that's what those graphics, the modeling look like. We were trying to show you how far the river would, I mean, it's going to look like that. That top graph is
So
basically what we would expect.
The channels on either side, so the banks on either side are fairly constant. The island in the middle gets bigger.
Yeah.
You kind of have the 2 channels coming
Yeah.
down like that.
So it would not substantially change, is what you're saying? The banks of the river
A
would
little
not substantially
shallower,
change?
but the location would be pretty much where they are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but it will be shallower. And so you, whatever boaters, you may have some boaters upstream that used to, with motorboats, they may see an impact to their recreation.
Yeah, my question was more a question of aesthetics, I suppose.
Anybody else?
Are there other towns of the north of us choosing to remove this at this point?
Well, and I should mention, you may have heard the Corps of Engineers is doing a study on the Fox. They've had some appropriations, so they're calling it the 519 study. And many of you may be aware of that, but they're looking at all the dams, whether they're state-owned or if they're private or village-owned. They're looking at all those, but they're just at the study phase. But yes, many of them are looking. We're looking at South Elgin, we're looking at Geneva. Montgomery Dam is currently in design to be removed. So I believe there's maybe a few that aren't interested, but they're going through the process to decide what their options are if they choose not to.
Okay. Steve, what do you need?
So, from a staff perspective, if the board was going to move forward with pushing one option to look at and get public feedback on, it would be option 6.
Option 6 for me.
Which is the straight culvert. It's the cheaper option that keeps the most water in the mill race.
That's going to cut through the park then, though, right?
No,
No.
that is the one that will basically come in from north of the parking lot and go under the parking lot, so through
Got
a
it.
pipe.
Similar to what it is now, but
Similar to what it is now, the
Similar.
culvert would just be rerouted. to get to a different
Got it.
spot.
Are we only planning to propose or give the public one option for feedback, or, I mean?
You
I
can
guess-
propose more options. I think the IDNR made a good point of categorizing them, because taking 10 options would be
No,
really hard.
I was going to say, are we at least going to leave the full dam removal option in there? To, you
Well,
know?
the dam, so even in the culvert option, the full dam still gets removed. The culvert just gets
Well, I'm saying no
relocated.
culvert. Like, again,
Oh, okay.
Leave it as is.
no, I'm saying if we remove the dam, I know it sounds like most opinions on here to keep the mill race. From the beginning of this, I think this mill race here is a complete waste of space to the village. I think, we're trying to bring more stuff down to the park here, more events, that's a lot of real estate right there that we could gain if we were to get rid of that portion of the mill race. Maybe we can extend a culvert further down just so that we don't affect the homes. So that was kind of my whole thing, is we're going to do this, and this is going to cost a heck of a lot of money, whether it's to the village or not, or the state, or who it might be. This is a lot of real estate right here that we want to use this park. What if we fill that in and we just gain another 30% or whatever it might be to the park? I don't think we should just completely ignore that option, in my opinion.
So
I
you're
think it
for
has an
removal of
aesthetic
the dam
value,
with
though.
No, maybe a
mill
different
race does.
culvert option where it shoots the water further down so that the homes still are riverfront, but we also can gain usable space over here.
I will add that option might not be viable because as you move downstream, you're trying to have that river flow by gravity into the mill race. And as you move down, you're losing that, we call it the head or the.
Well, couldn't you just extend the culvert all the way through here?
You wouldn't, this is much lower than where we were collecting it up here. And so you would, when we ran the open channel through there, we lost all that head, and that's why that option wasn't evaluated further, or that's why we didn't recommend it, because you barely got any flow into the mill race.
I think he's saying start it as option 6, but just
Start it,
continue
but
that
just
pipe further
continue the
down
pipe
so that it can
underground
be
further.
filled in.
Oh, okay, yeah,
That's
no,
that would
I
be what I was-
misunderstood, sorry, thank you.
What I was thinking, so that we still gain real estate and the homes don't lose their riverfront status, But
I think,
whatever.
I mean,
One
Mike
of
Lowry,
the options that I'd like a little bit more information on, which I think would be a good medium, if we do have a public safety concern, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about the ramp, because I am a little concerned about unintended consequences if we go digging around and removing things, where if we're really worried about public safety, I think I'd like to hear a little bit about the ramp, because if we can address the public safety issue and keep our beautiful riverfront, because this is an amenity, this is a draw. If you ever notice, you don't see a lot of people gathering on that side of the dam. This is the spot everybody's coming to look at the dam. We set up a gazebo. I don't think we should mess with something that isn't necessarily broken. And again, I'm just so worried about these unintended consequences. Now we can't have motorboats. Okay, well, now we've got a shallow stream. What if we've now polluted the water because we went and messed with the sediment? So I'd like to hear about what is the option of keeping the dam, but addressing the public safety issue.
So that particular option, it addresses the safety minimally. It does not prevent the liability. It does not make that dam completely safe. It is the only thing we can do to reduce the safety concern, but it does not take away the safety concern like you would if you took away the dam. So the responsibility, if you keep that dam, then the village or the local entity would need to take ownership and that liability of the dam. Even though there still is a modification to the dam is still there. But basically what it is it just fills in those steps with rock, and it makes it so that when the water goes over the top of the dam, it slows down that velocity, and it causes a little bit safer if someone was to go over the dam, and there would be a little bit less of that big turbulent area and that scour hole. But it does not eliminate the danger, and it's just a modification for safety. So I understand your viewpoint, but it is, and then the local entity would be responsible for most of the cost of that particular.
if it's not going to reduce the river width, which is what we enjoy looking at, I'm just speaking, obviously just going to speak for myself. Imagine a scenario where we have the ability to have the state pay for the removal of the dam. We don't remove it, we take on that liability, and what happens if somebody drowns in the river? They're going to come to us, because we had the opportunity to have it removed at the state's cost, and we chose not to do that. That's just my position on it. I think that if it's not going to substantially ruin or eliminate the beautiful aesthetic that we have right here, I think that option 6 is best. And actually, I have to disagree with you, Todd. I think that the mill race is a beautiful part of the park, and I think it's one of the things that people come and see is the water. I like it myself, but, I mean, I'm not dug into that, but it's just, I like how it looks.
Yeah,
I'm for option 6. Dam's got to be removed. The waterways need to be cleaned up, and we need a safe environment for fishermen, because people like to fish. On the other side of the dam, fish are dying. Why are they dying? Because the water is polluted. Algae's growing. We went through this before. The dam needs to be removed, clean up our waterways so people can fish and recreate. And I'm fine with option 6 when we have the mill race so that people can have their water.
How many accidents and deaths have there been with the dams recently?
There have been several saves, but I believe there's been 2 deaths. Yeah, it's the police report generally provides it, and it's in the report. It's just been a while, so I apologize, but it's
Yeah, it was
been.
back in the
I mean,
90s,
at the end of the day, we're never going to be able to stop people from doing stupid things.
Correct.
So, I mean, I've lived in the area my entire life, and back in, I think it was 94 or 95, I had a schoolmate who drowned at this dam from going over. But since then, I've not heard of anyone else. So I'm just thinking, like, that was a really long time ago. Like, again, they were doing something stupid. So I hate to just remove something just because we're afraid somebody might do something stupid. Somebody could jump off the building. So what is our responsibility if we were to take on the dam and somebody makes a poor choice?
You could say the same thing about the mill race. I see little kids all the
Right.
time over here, and they get so close to the edge. I mean, I've always thought that was more of a safety issue than the dam.
Not if you get, no. Mill race is not, no, it's not the same.
Well,
To your questions earlier of what it might look, I would go ahead and reach out to South Batavia and to Carpentersville and ask them what it looks like, how they feel, are they satisfied with the results? Because those are direct examples for this river, what it might look like. That might bring a little level of comfort, or it might make you think that's not what I want it to look like. So at least you have good examples to look at it.
Ultimately, it just comes down to a liability thing, it sounds like. And it seems kind of silly that we're going to remove something that, yes, is aesthetically pleasing. It does bring people enjoyment. And what ultimately would our liability be? Do you have an answer on that?
If we owned the dam,
Yeah.
we would probably need to put buoys that, signified the danger out there. We would have to do something to notify the public of the fact that there's a danger. And if we didn't, then there could be some liability. If we do that and there's still, injury or death, we can always be sued.
Yeah, people can sue for anything.
Right.
How big is that island? Do you have any idea? Could we utilize that perhaps in the future for some recreational reason? Or would that be too small of a landmass? Do you know, would you be able to answer that? That's kind of what I'm thinking, is that could be a park itself, so.
Yeah, again, the people along the river own that portion, so as they move upstream, you do have different owners. So you would have to work with whoever is along that area.
They own to the center of the riverbed on either side? Or they?
Yeah, on each side.
So as you look out at the river right here in the middle, you see a bunch of algae and lily pads. That would be dry, solid ground now. Basically, that's where the island would get bigger.
And we had a meeting last year with the Park District, and they did address that. I think if the dam stays, they were looking to add a bunch of signage upriver, and I think they were estimating that in like the millions of dollars to put the correct signage along the river upstream of the dam to notify people that the dam is coming. So I believe that Steve could probably remember that in the meeting.
I think
as
the
well.
concerns was you would definitely, if you were to decide to keep the dam, and let's say the state did transfer ownership to us in the Fox Valley Park District, right now we don't own the dam at all, puts us in a different perspective than other cities. Other cities that own their dams, they're then responsible for the maintenance of said dam, or if that dam fails, the removal or replacement of that dam. So that's one thing to consider, because there's obviously a cost to maintaining a dam. Now, right now, our dam's 50 years old, but it's in good shape from what we've been told. So, but as you know, upstream, some of the towns north of us have had actual breaches of their dam. So they're worried about that cost because they own it, not the state. So there is some thought about long-term maintenance, but nothing in the immediate future. I mean, as right now, the dam is operating fine to what we are aware of. As far as Brian said, yeah, there would be signage, and you would. I think what Kevin was alluding to, and I'm not trying to play a lawyer, but you're going to, if you take liability of any public space, you're going to want to sign it the best you can to reduce liability in that sense, and just make sure that you're not creating a hazard as an additional hazard to that area, to make sure everyone is aware that there is a danger inherently in a dam if you're on the river. To Trustee Nedvedge's comment earlier about the mill race, nothing here tonight has to be, it doesn't have to be one. I specifically put option Z in the parentheses, because if the board thinks that the culvert option is, if the board wanted to move forward with a dam removal, the culvert option does meet the goals of the state and meets the goals of ours, which is to get water to the mill race. If we wanted to keep it for, let's say, the residents on Grant Street, or if we wanted to keep it in the park. To Trustee Nedvedge's point, it doesn't mean that the culvert, just by where it's drawn on the picture today, doesn't mean that's the exact place the culvert has to finish or start. It could be dragged down further. Either way, the idea was, do we want to consider a culvert option to keep water to the mill race at some point? So just some thoughts. So if you wanted to move something forward today to have more conversation, it would go to the Fox Valley Park District, and then we would talk it over with them and then talk about the next steps. The public meeting wouldn't even be until most likely the spring, because we'd really want to fine tune what we want to present so that we make sure we're giving really good information, answering questions the board has tonight. The public's going to have those same questions. They're going to want answers too, so we want to make sure we have them.
I should add a comment about liability. I mean, as a general proposition, if we didn't do anything, if we didn't create a dangerous situation, we don't take on any liability. If we're involved in making a decision and taking some action, that's where liability could flow. In regard to choices between making it more safe or less safe, if we chose to go the less safe route, especially if the less safe route was more expensive, we could be taking on liability in deciding to do the less safe thing. So, it's not anything I could say definitively in terms of taking on liability, but those are the kinds of things. I mean, if somebody was looking for an excuse to sue the village, they would find a hook if we made the determination to spend more money and make it less safe.
So that would be reasons for someone to sue us if something happened. Yeah. So why we don't want to do that. Why would we do that?
I think one thing that's also important to note too is, just for consideration, is I believe it was option 10, but it really goes back to what the state's plan is for the dam. If the village says no, we don't want to remove the dam. In that case, I believe option 10 is the rock, and that's what they were alluding to. We put this on the screen just to kind of show you it an overview. I know it's hard to see it, you'd have to imagine the rock, but basically they're putting rock on the north side of the dam to kind of even it out, and then they're taking that step down and they're dragging rock so that it ends up being more gradual. But you're not going to take boats over it or things like that, because it's still going to be extremely shallow. It's like going over a dam, but just think of it this way. It's allowing that, it's getting rid of that scouring and that undertow, it's dragging that water out further and more gradually. But there would be a lot of rock added to the south part of the dam to even it out. So what you would end up seeing, I wish we had a picture that shows it, but you would end up seeing water kind of riffling over it like a waterfall, but it would be over rock, like rapids. Would that be?
Yeah, and unfortunately we don't, because most people, we can't find people that have selected this option. I know it's been done other places, but it definitely slows down the, like you said, but there is maintenance associated with keeping that area full of rock. I mean, you will get big storm events and some of that rock might wash out. We would design it in such a way that it would try to stay there, but we know things move in a river. They're dynamic systems. So you would have to maintain that and keep rock in that area. There's a reason there's a scour hole there, even though they put those steps in there, because the river is strong and the river, as much as we try, we cannot contain that the flow of after a high event. And we do know in general that you're getting more rainfall and intense storms. In the last 10 years, we've had more intense storms than we've had in the history of the area. So just keep that in mind too, that things are changing. You are getting more flooding, and you will be getting more changes or damage associated with those higher events. And then I would just add, if you do choose to keep the dam for aesthetics and you're worried about making a change, just recognize that there are those secondary benefits, the wildlife, the habitat, and the oxygen, and EPA in general wants to see those dams removed as well because of all those ancillary benefits. You will have a more healthy riverfront. And, those are some of those other ancillary benefits that need to be considered.
So, Mayor, I would say to the board tonight that we started with the intent of giving an overview, having the IDNR present their findings of a study with the potential to move an option or two or whatnot to the public for review. The board can do that right now and say, we're comfortable that we want to keep moving forward with this process. Here's one or two options that we want to look at, or three. And, can you work with the IDNR and the Fox Valley Park District, get that kind of meeting scheduled? Or the other option would be if you're still interested but want more information, what we could do is also hone in on the options the board liked, the culvert option, and kind of look at that option more in depth so that you know more about it. So basically what that would entail is us just meeting with the IDNR after the meeting and going over, trying to get some of those questions that came up tonight answered, bringing it back to committee of the whole, just to give you more opportunity to really hone in on the effects of that one option or two options that you're interested in. So once again, if you want to move forward, you can either tell me, go to the IDNR, bring back these options with more information, or bring them forward to the Fox Valley Park District for more review.
I'd just like to go on the record to say that I've listened to everything, and I think the most practical and intelligent decision is number 6. It keeps the
mill race,
thank you, and also helps with the safety factor and the ecological issues. Now, in terms of Todd's idea, I would like to kind of look at the geography before I agree or disagree with Todd, because he has a good point, but I say to that, well, maybe the island would make up that difference in the land that we would lose too. So there's all kinds of different things to think about. But if the culvert can start at its original origination point and then be extended through, there would be more of a cost to that, right?
There would be, and you would disrupt your park for the construction of the culvert.
Right. So I'm kind of for option 6. I'm not kind of for it. I'm kind of settled on option 6 so far, unless I hear something else in the future. That's my position for now, at least tonight. So,
How about bringing back the committee of the whole? And there's a lot of information here we should probably chew on. So, I mean, it's ask for answers right tonight. I don't think it's really right anyway. So, maybe some of the questions that were discussed, Steve, they can, come back with more info and let everybody sleep on this and think about it. So.
Sure, but what I'd like to do, if the board can you hone in out of the 10 options? Can we are we honing in on number 6 as
Number 6 for me.
as an option so that we know which one we're bringing more information back on?
Number 6 for me also.
I'd like to keep the dam. That should stay on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, number 6 in some fashion would be fine with me, but I also think we should absolutely consider keeping the dam as well. Just again, if not for at least presenting that to the public.
Yeah, it
you
needs
know,
to be an option.
So that we just, they know that we considered it and present the negative effects of that.
And it
mainly
needs to
liability,
be,
you
it
know.
needs to be the dam as is, not with it filled in. Because it won't be a dam at that point.
So if you don't do anything whatsoever to the dam, that does not limit the liability at all. It doesn't mitigate the danger at all that exists now. To do absolutely nothing. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, do you have?
Right now, I have, go back to committee of the whole with more information, basically a straight comparison of keeping the dam or option 6, which actually wouldn't be hard to do because obviously keeping the dam is right there, and then just option 6, which we can just hone in on that with the IDNR, bring it back and try to do a real direct comparison.
Sounds good to me.
So we go from 10 to 2 for you. Is that okay?
Yeah, and after tonight, if you have questions, I guess send them to Steve, and he can send, as he talks with us. But and we know that it's a lot of information, and we know it's very technical, and we just wanted to give you an overview, but it's really hard to give a non-technical overview. So hopefully you have enough understanding, and we are available to answer any questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no exec session, so motion adjourned.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. All right, have a good night.